Okay, welcome everybody. It is September the 10th, and this is MELS 601 Clinical Coach Session. I appreciate you joining me this evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about the dynamics of this group before we kind of get into everything. You may recognize some names that you normally don't see and some faces that you normally don't see in your MELS 601 cohort. That's because for your clinical coach session, I have combined the cohorts. So you probably already know this. I think I may have mentioned it to you before, but just to make sure it's clear to everyone, Dr. Church's cohort is in this session, and Dr. Todd's cohort is in this section. You're both still in MELS 601. Your syllabus the syllabus that you see is very similar. That's one thing Gardner Webb does and School of Education does in the graduate program is trying to make the materials as consistent as possible so everybody's getting the same foundation at the same time. With that being said, as I said to you, I think the last time we met, you have two people, both of them teach third grade, both of them teaching the standards, both of them are in a PLC doing their lesson plans. They come up with the same type of lesson plan, the same pacing guide, but between those two third grade classrooms, each teacher is going to do it different to reflect their teaching style, to reflect who they are, and also to reflect the needs of the class. So even though we're meeting together, everything that I'm going to tell you is going to be consistent and will be applicable to you regardless of what course you're in or what cohort you're in. When we run across some things that are different from Dr. Todd's to Dr. Church's, and there are, I will let you know. But with that being said, I really advise you don't compare each other's, what one's getting in Dr. Church's course with what one's getting in Dr. Todd's course. They do some things the different way at a different time. If you start comparing notes between the two cohorts, you're just going to add to confusion. So certainly get to know each other, build your network. Don't have a problem with that, but don't do the, well, Dr. Church is doing it this way. Well, Dr. Todd's doing it that way. Great. Dr. Church can do it this way. Dr. Todd can do it that way. Dr. Bullis is going to do it his way. So don't be comparing that. But it is, beside this cohort, I've got 604 candidates. And just for the nature of the nights in the week, I can't do separate classes. I had to combine this class. And it makes sense to me because that way you're all getting the same information at the same time as we progress through the program. When you get into 602 and 603 and 604, you may even be in the same cohort by then. And I may split you up at that time. It's just the way this semester's worked out with the number of candidates I got. I'm going to have to do this the way it is. So I may say some things that you may have not heard yet. I know I'm going to do that. I may say some things that you have already heard yet, but just for the sake that everybody is at the same page, we'll go ahead and get started. Tonight, I sent the email out, and I hope everybody got that. If you didn't get the email, then for those of you who are on here, it's obvious you got the email. If you have anybody in your peer group that didn't get the email about tonight's class with the mini agenda included in the email, please let them know. Please ask them to reach out to me to make sure everybody's getting the same information. This video is being recorded. I follow the same, basic rules for Zooming that, of course, you all know now, being remote instruction professionals that you probably are. It's not mandatory that you attend. However, I do track who's viewed the video. I do track who's been on the video. So if I don't see some type of interaction from you as we progress through the course, I'm just going to check on you to make sure everything's okay and that you're getting what you need to be successful. The recording, what I do, depending on how my night is structured, if I've got time to download the recording, convert it over to YouTube and post the link tonight, I will. I doubt I will tonight because as soon as I finish up here, I've got another commitment that I have to adhere to. So if I don't do it that night, I'll do it early the next morning. You'll find the recording of my videos in two places. I'll show you in just a moment where they'll be located in the course shell. And sometimes Dr. Church, I think, takes my recording and posts it into his course shell, and Dr. Todd may too, so it may be there. But as far as we're concerned, and I'm concerned, you'll find my recording in the video library of my course shell. I'll show you where that's at in just a moment. And also, I usually send out an email to all the people in the cohort saying, hey, here's the link to the recording of tonight's episode. Episodes, not like a sitcom or something, but tonight's session. And also, you can find it in the video library. So just a reminder of where that's at. So if for some reason life happens, you got something you've got to do, you can't be here tonight, then you've got an opportunity to watch the video. Now, in going through recordings, this is a recommendation that I always give the candidates. I always kind of keep a notebook when I do Zoom sessions and webinars. Of course, I keep a notebook to take notes, but I always kind of keep track of the time. Started at 8 o'clock. And if the instructor or the presenter said something that I'm thinking, man, I want to go back and review that later, I know what time it is. 8:15, he said something or she said something, I want to go back and review. So I'll just jot the time down in my notes. That way, later on, when I watch the recording, I don't have to try to find it. I go to time frame 8:15 and I know it's somewhere around there. And that saves me a lot of time going back to that specific point in the presentation that I want to watch. So I always recommend you do the same. If there's something that I'm getting into and you think, oh man, I'm taking notes, but I want to go back and listen to this again, but I don't want to search through the whole video to find it, just notate the time. And then you can fast forward, so to speak, when you look at the recording and listen to that. All right, I'm going to, okay, look at the chat for just a moment. Okay, great. Yeah, feel free to ask questions and you guys correspond with each other. I'll check it from time to time to make sure that there's not something that I need to address in the chat as well. All right, so tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about task 1. Going to look forward a little bit into task 2. I believe both of you may have already got some information from your course instructors on task 2. I'm just going to kind of review that and give you my perspective on it as well. We're going to do a overview of the course shell, and I'm going to talk briefly about task string. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on, but right now let's get the parts that we have to deal with. We've talked about this before. Let's get the parts that we have to deal with down pat, the process kind of ingrained in our heads before we introduce something new that you're not going to need to know about anyway right now. So before I get started, do you have any questions that's just burning a hole in your brain right now that you want to go ahead and get out there? All right, great, because this is a high-flying group. You guys have got it. I'm just making sure that you got it, but you already got it. And you got 2 great course instructors. Now, I'm saying it when they're not even here, so you know it's sincere. Dr. Todd and Dr. Church are the best at MELS 601 that I've worked with in my 14 years here at Gardner Webb. So you guys are in good shape. All right, so let me share the screen. And right now I want to pull up the scale handbook, and I've hoped you had the opportunity to look through the scale handbook. I've referenced it several times. You probably haven't dealt as much with it in your course shell with Dr. Todd and Dr. Church, but it's something that I work from all the time. This lets me know what the expectations are for the evidences. This lets me know how you're going to be graded. And yeah, they've copied and pasted into their syllabus, and they've also pulled it out, maybe put it on a document they shared with you, but I just go straight to the source. Let's go down here, and we're going to scroll on down to ABSL. This is the ABSL task 1, because your content with your course shell with your instructors is going to change depending on what their standards and what their pacing guide is and what they've got to cover in the course shell. My sole purpose is to help you with the evidence and your internship hours. And from this evidence, now, yeah, you'll hear different phrases. You'll hear evidence, you'll hear artifacts, things like that. When I'm talking about evidence, I'm talking about these big, huge projects that are cut up into little bitty pieces. When I'm talking about evidence, I'm talking about the APSL. The APSL has several different pieces, 5 tasks, 5 pieces that make up the APSL. But when I'm talking about the evidence, I'm talking about the APSL as a whole. And I deal mainly with that, because when you create this evidence, within that evidence and also within your internship hours, once you create it, you're going to pull some specific pieces out of that evidence to use in some other areas to satisfy graduation requirements by Gardner-Webb, and to satisfy licensure requirements by, if you're in North Carolina, Department of Public Instruction, North Carolina. If you're South Carolina, the Department of Public Instruction in South Carolina. So doing a really good job on this evidence and taking time to go through it, to get feedback, to make revisions, to get feedback, to make revisions, to get feedback, to make revisions, to get it complete is very important, because you're going to be using this documentation in several different ways. So in looking at the evidence and look at task 1, you should have got permission from your principal to start a professional learning community. You did a lot of research on professional learning communities, and through that research, you let that research guide you in creating your own professional learning community. If you were in a professional learning community, to restructure your professional learning community where you have a leadership role, and then pull that group of people together, and based on the knowledge that you gained in your research, you were to define the purpose of the PLC, accomplish some fundamental keys that are necessary in professional learning community, and then tell the story. All right, and by telling that story, you're going to tell us how that all played out. And I've talked to this about with you already, but during that time where you're doing all that, you're also creating artifacts. And those artifacts you can show at the end of that narrative in task 1 as an appendix. You talk about it in the narrative, and then you show it at the end in an appendix. And you hold on to those artifacts, because those artifacts are going to be important to you later on in task string. So everybody should be to a good point with that. If you haven't got that started, you should be getting to that part of your writing now. Certainly should have already engaged in some of the professional learning communities research out there, and kind of getting your notes together to start that narrative. One thing that you should be getting done that's relatively simple and maybe already completed, I know some of you have, is your title page and your profile. Your title page, that title page is the title page that you're going to use. You're going to have a title page for each evidence all through the program. It's MELS 601, you have a title page for your APSL. And MELS 602, you're going to have a title page for your APSL. So in the APSL, you have that title page, and you're going to put that in front of task 1. And I'll tell you why here in a little bit. Go ahead and put that in front of task 1, and just let that be the resting place for it for right now. And then also, you should be really close to have completed your school profile. We talked about this already, kind of some things that should be included in that profile, but basically you're giving the reader a picture, a narrative of what your school looks like, and what different stakeholders are represented in the school, what subgroups, if you're a Title I school, if you're LEA charter school, if you're a magnet school, if you're a learning academy, you give the reader a picture of your school. That profile you're going to use, as long as you stay at that school, you're going to use that profile throughout the program. So that's 2 pieces of documentations that you create here at the very beginning that you're not going to have to necessarily create again. You will need to tweak them based on what you're doing and what you want to focus on. But that's 2 things that you're going to do now. Now, I know Dr. Todd, if you're in Dr. Todd's class, she told you to send that to me. And if you want to send that to me for feedback, great, do that. I don't have a place in my course shell, and I'll show you that in just a moment, for you to submit to me that. And I do that on purpose. If you want me to look at it right now, just email it to me and put it in attachment. I'll be happy to look at it and give you feedback on it. The reason I don't have a Dropbox, an assignment Dropbox for that, and the reason is the very same reason that I'm asking you to put it on the front of task 1 of the APSL, because I'm going to review your title page and your profile as I review task 1. So just put all that together and I'll review it. I will give you, you know, official feedback on it. When I review your task 1, just include it. So in task 1, when you submit task 1 to me for review, then you're going to have a title page, your school profile, and then task 1. And I'm going to give you feedback on all of that through task 1. You don't have to include that in task 2, 3, or 4, just in task 1. So that's where we'll do that feedback. We'll give that feedback on your title page and your school profile when we do task 1. You don't have to include it in task 2, 3, or 4. All right, so any questions on what I told you so far? Okay, good deal. So you should have got some directions on task 2. And this is what I'm talking about in the scale handbook. I'm going to move on down here. A lot of great information here. This week 9, week 10, week 11, don't pay attention to that. That changes from course instructor to course instructor. That's basically a guideline, but that's a point that I want to make with you as well tonight, is I don't give deadlines. You guys are professional. You're in a professional organization. You're accomplished educators, or you wouldn't have made it into the program to begin with. You should be able to pace yourself, see what you need to accomplish, know when, set yourself a timeline for yourself and get that accomplished. When the superintendent comes into me and he says, I need this done, and you take care of it for me, I don't ask them, well, when can I turn in part 1 of it? When can I turn in part 2 of it? When can I turn in part 3 of it? When the superintendent of the Board of Education comes to me and tells me they need something, then I automatically structure my calendar myself to get it to them as quickly and as efficiently as possible. When I do all my federal grants for the federal monies that come into the school system, I know in order to get that money in October, to drop down in October, I've got to accomplish this, 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 and this at different increments throughout the summer and fall. They don't give me those deadlines. I create those myself. You can do the same. As you go through here and turning in things to me, I'm not going to give you a deadline. Now, if I see a lack of progress or some slow progress, and I'm a little bit concerned about you finishing on time, I'll get in touch with you and we'll work on it together. But if you ask me about deadlines, I'm probably not going to be able to give you an answer specifically if you ask me about deadlines from Dr. Church or Dr. Todd, because I don't monitor their deadlines either. All right. So we're going to roll on down the scale handbook. It's always good to read the description. It's very important to read the prompt, and then it's always good to look at the rubric, because I told you before, this is what the evaluator uses to grade your documentation for your licensure requirement. At the very end of the semester, towards the end of the semester, when you submit the whole APSL, they'll be looking at this rubric, and that's how they're going to evaluate what you turned in. So in task 2, you basically get together with your PLC and you do an academic needs assessment. You do an academic needs assessment. If you're a Title I school and you're on the leadership team, you've probably heard of comprehensive needs assessment, same type of thing, with the specific goal of determining gaps or needs. What you look at, what is and what should be. That's how you determine what a need is. What can I identify right here, but what should it look like? And that gap between what it is and what it should be, that's the need that you identify. And that need is to be identified in student learning. And I think the description and even the prompt may say emphasizing on digital learning. In my opinion, that's a grand slam for you guys this semester. Because what have we been working on since March? What are we all still engaged in right now? Remote instruction. That's about the epitome of digital learning right now. What's the need? Well, there's some big needs out there. I'm not saying you have to do that, but you all know I'm not as knowledgeable at South Carolina as I am North Carolina, but I have a feeling not many of us, if any of us, got some standardized test scores at the end of last year that we could use now to determine. There may be some check-in data. There's certainly some student data out there. There may be, I know some systems are doing some diagnostic assessments at the very beginning of the year to try to determine the need from March to now, the gap, the learning gap, the social emotional learning gap, mental health gap that may have been created since March. So you may have some assessment data out there if you've started school and some of those diagnostic assessments have been given. But you get together with your team and you do that needs assessment. You pull in all the data that you can, and you know, even looking at the remote instruction plan, look at attendance, look at the data that was pulled in from remote instruction, and determine what's the greatest need that we have in our school at this point in time by looking at all this data. And so you're leading it into a deep data dive and looking for those key pieces of data that's going to identify the needs that your team wants to address. Now, every year somebody says, you know, automatically I know what I'm going to do. We need to do this. We're going to do this. I'm going to do all about reading scores and reading achievement because I know that's where we're at. Kind of stay away from that because the value of this process is you and your team discovering what that is together and going through that process and having those conversations and showing that collaboration and you leading them, you delegating them, you pulling the data, you working with different people in the school to pull that data in, you pulling it together for everybody, you putting it in front of the team, and you as a team looking at what that need is and let the need present itself. You can do some great things in your school if you kind of go in without a preconceived notion of what you need to do. It's okay. I'm not, if you're there, that might be just because you're so intuitive that you already know what direction you need to head in, but don't finalize your decision. Let the team and you discover that decision together going through this process. It's a great thing. It really is. So what you're going to do in prompt 1 of task 2 is you're going to describe how you collected that data, what process you use to kind of prioritize it and set it up in different criterias, and then bringing that data in front of your team and leading your team through looking at that data, discussing, maybe, you know, even arguing. That's conflict resolution, coming to the point where you determine if what the need is in student learning. Sometimes I'll have candidates says, well, we need to beautify our school and we need to do the landscape. I had a candidate one time, they determined their need was that the landscaping in front of the school need to be changed. Now there's a place for that. Facilities, certainly. Facilities and landscaping and having a friendly, warm, beautiful campus adds to student learning. But I want to see something academic, and so does the evaluator. Something that's definitely tied into student learning, not a variable that contributes to student learning, but a variable that directly impacts student learning. That's what you need to go through when you're looking at this data. You know, some people do discipline, and if you've got the data to show it, then okay, yeah, improving discipline, improving classroom management may have a positive impact, but you've got to show how it directly impacts. So that's all about discovering the need, but having the data to back up and the narrative written to back up what that need was. And then in prompt 2 is you just graphically represent that data. In the form of charts, tables, graphs. APA is very specific on how to include those, how to list those, how to title those. You don't go figure 1 down to figure 6. If you're going to use a figure, it needs to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, if it's not figure 1, table 1, or excuse me, figure 1, table 2, it would be the first figure would be figure 1, the first table would be table 1, the first chart would be chart 1. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. I'm just thinking back about some of the things that I've had to address in the past. So you graphically represent that in some type of visual of what the data is, and use those visuals to support what you're saying. That's task 2. All within the context of working with your group. It's not you looking at the data and determining what the need is. It's the group looking at the data and you all determining the need. It's not the group doing it on their own. It's you and your narrative showing how you led the group and how you facilitated those conversations attached to it. Okay, I'm gonna look at the chat. Any questions on task 2? Okay, is data from exam scores permissible from the school year before last? That is a great question. That's really one only you can answer and your team can answer. If you think that there's some relevancy there that's kind of affecting or a representation of what you're maybe seeing at your school, then yeah, pull it in. But you know, we don't have any. This is 2021. We don't have any 1920 scores. If we pull in 1819, I'm just saying, I'm not going to tell you if you can use it or you can't use it. I'm going to just say, make sure that if you do use it, it has relevancy at this point in time. Okay, let me read the chat. Okay, so the question was, is data from exam scores permissible from the school year before last, since we are still having exams at this point, looking at proficiency? Yeah, sure, and that's just what I said. If you see it, if you see there's a relevancy and what your team needs to look at, then certainly pull it in. There's really not any parameters. There's some suggestions and recommendations on the type of data that you look like, but there's really not any parameters, and that's the great thing about a needs assessment is you do look at a huge amount of data. You look at the school comprehensively, hence the phrase comprehensive needs assessment, and pull in all that data and let the data tell you, you know, where the need is. And just making sure that if you do that, you can support that in your narrative and you can support that and explaining why you chose to do that. These evidences are really yours to create, and as you proceed through the program, you will get less and less direction on how to proceed through these evidences, because nobody knows your school like you do. Nobody knows the culture like you do. So if we give you tight parameters on how to do this, then we're not allowing you to be creative and taking away the value of exploring that for your school and what's specific to your group and specific to your needs. So that's why as we go through the program, there'll be less and less of that, because you'll be able to think more like an administrator. Once again, when I was a principal, when the superintendent came and said, I need you to tell me this, I need you to tell me that, he just told me. He didn't give me a document that said, I needed this, and this way, and it needs to look like this, and I want you to show a chart here and here, and then have it ready by this date to present to the board. He just says, I need it, you go do it. And so that you need to start thinking like that, utilizing the people in your building that have the leadership potential that can help you, understanding the culture and the needs of your school, and being able to formalize relevant action plans that will benefit your school. That's what we're doing. That's why the program's so great, because it really gives you some authentic experiences that you can draw on when you do become an assistant principal, a principal, and thereafter. Any other questions on task 2? We're going to go down here to the rubric. So, and if you can do a video clip, it says that in the prompt, a video clip, that's a great artifact. The agenda for the meeting's a great artifact. The minutes from the meeting are great artifacts. Emails back and forth on scheduling the meeting or giving out directions is great. Those are all good artifacts for you to collect during this time. If you want to do a video, that's great. If your school system's still in remote learning and people do not want to get together, in the same classroom. You can do what we're doing here. You can do a Zoom PLC meeting and record it. That could be an artifact. So to be proficient in this, in task 2, let me go on down here, is you, in your narrative, you have to describe how you collected the data, the strategies that you used, who you went to. You might even want to contact the director of accountability and testing, or it might be an assistant superintendent, I don't know, but whoever does the data gathering and takes care of testing and accountability in your district. You may want to contact them and see what some things that they may have found out, some check-in data, that benchmarks that could help you for your school. But you talk about how you did that, how you went about determining what data you wanted to collect and how you went about collecting it. Then in that, you show those graphical visual representations of that data to illustrate the analysis. You say, we discovered this. No, don't just put a visual up there and expect the reader to look through it and find out what's important. You tell them what's important. You show that visual, and then you tell the reader what they will see in that visual. That's all part of describing those charts and graphs and stuff to the reader, so they know what you're thinking is what's important. And you have that narrative and draw those conclusions, and you write about it. And then with interwoven with all that narrative is you showing how you led the team. And I think for accomplish, I think it is just, I think it goes from there's evidence to strong evidence, or you have a digital representation of what you're doing. So it's just showing a strong evidence versus strong evidence. So once again, we already had that conversation about proficient and accomplished. We're going to get you to proficient. Any questions? Okay, great. And if you've heard this, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And Dr. Bowles,
Yes,
I've got a question real quick.
Yeah.
So you said this was, this is supposed to be a comprehensive assessment of needs at the school, but my PLC is a subject specific. So I don't know how I would really address school-wide learning needs within this very specific PLC. Have I structured my PLC in the wrong way?
No. Once again, it's if you are, in high school, it's a little bit different, or middle school, or, you can look at within a certain amount of data, looking into that data with something that you're dealing with right now. That is fine. That is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Like I said, if you have something based on past conversations, based on your school improvement plan, that's going to kind of give you direction of where you're going to go, that's okay. And if it's already narrowed down a little bit, that's okay. But just make sure that you pull in all the data necessary to, like I said, to support the need that you discovered. And the whole thing about this is not just doing it to satisfy the needs of the program, but to do something beneficial to your school. And if this is something that's going to be beneficial to that specific department or specific area that you're looking at, if it benefits the school, by all means do it, because we get back to what are we all doing this for? We're doing what's best for kids. Don't do something just to satisfy the program. The great value in this program is doing something that is also going to help the school out and help your students. Great question. Any other questions? All right, like I said, I know this is really repetitive, but like I've told you from the very beginning, you're going to hear the same thing over and over and over again, just to make sure that everybody gets off to a solid start. At this point in time, I want to go to my Blackboard shell, and kudos to you guys, because I believe I looked today and I have, it shows me when you've accessed my Blackboard shell, what time, what date, how long you were there. And everybody in this cohort has, that I could tell, I just did a quick browse, but it looked like to me everybody's already found my clinical internship shell and clicked on it. Great, I appreciate you doing that. Like I've told you, there's 3 main areas that you're going to work in. You're going to work in, your Blackboard course shell, your Blackboard internship shell, and then another platform out and away from Blackboard and the Gardner Webb website is TaskStream. So when you pull up Blackboard, tonight I want to focus on my clinical internship shell, and I need to move y'all's picture. How's that for a good Wilkes County saying, y'all's? I got to move y'all's picture so I can look and see what I'm doing here. So you'll see as I pull up mine, and you should be looking at my Blackboard right now. That's what I should be sharing. If I'm not, somebody click in and let me know. But you can see I have Dr. Church's course shell, Dr. Todd's course shell, the two cohorts in 604 that I'm working with, Dr. Sanders and her other course, Dr. Sanders. Those are my course shells. But down here is my clinical internship shell. And that's when you're doing things that I am directly involved in. It's to be done in the clinical internship shell. So you have your MELS 6 course shells up here, and then you have your MELS clinical internship shell. And it's similar. It looks a lot alike, got a lot of information in it, but there are some differences. In order for you to satisfy your clinical experience that I'm supervising you in, that you have to complete within the clinical internship shell. So we're going to click on that. I'm going to move your picture. It doesn't look as fancy as probably Dr. Todd's and Dr. Church's shells do. I'm not much on frou-frou kind of stuff, and I apologize if it's just bland for you. But I've got it in instructor view right now, so there's looking at some, you're probably looking at some things here that you're not necessarily going to see if you go into student preview. Of course, there's the home page. You won't see that, that's hidden from you. But I have a content section here, and in the content section, just some things to help you as you begin. This is the crosswalk that's in the we looked at last time in your clinical clinical coach handbook that shows the different evidences and what competencies they're related to and everything. Here's some stuff on PLCs that I thought was really good about before. Here's a little document on establishing PLC norms. This is probably all elementary for you right now. You're past that point. Then internship shell directions. This is basically just pulling stuff out of the scale handbook and just kind of giving you some directions on what are the two things that you're going to working in. You're going to work for reviewing and to submitting something in Dropbox. You can read through that later on. I'm going to tell you what it says here in just a moment. And then if you want to forward your Gardner Webb email to your regular email address, there's directions on how to do that. When you communicate with me, and when I communicate with you, the university requires that we do it through Gardner Webb email. That way there's a paper trail, if you will, of correspondence and documentations of what was discussed. So only email me from your Gardner Webb email address. I will only email you from my Gardner Webb email address, and that's how we're communicating. I leave that up. I've got two monitors, and on one of those monitors, I leave my Gardner Webb email up all the time. I check it periodically through the day in case there's something. So if you email me, I'm not as active on it on the weekends. Very active on it during the week. On the weekends, I'm not as active, but I'll monitor that. And if you ever need to set up an individual Zoom or a small group Zoom or just talk on the phone, email me and we'll set it up. I probably need anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. I could probably meet and talk with you the same day, especially around lunchtime. I do have the flexibility of taking my lunch break pretty much whenever I want to, so I can reschedule that to fit your planning period or any time during the day that's good for you if we know a little bit ahead of time on when to do that. Templates and resources. This is things that I already gave out to you. If you're in 601 and 602 this year, you're doing APA 7th edition. Anybody from 603 to 605 are still in 6th edition. We just kind of made that break point last year of who would go ahead with the 7th edition of APA and who would go stick with the 6th edition. And as they graduate on out, everybody will transition on into the 7th edition. I think you've already seen this, effective peer review tips. Take a look at that. A lot of times during the course of the program, you're going to have to do annotated bibliography. Here's some information on that. What's the difference in the annotated bibliography and the literature review? Kind of when you do your PLC research and you want to do some research in just about every evidence after the ABSL, you want to do research because you always want to show that you've accumulated evidence-based practices to influence your actions. So that's a good document on that. Here's a sample of the final evidence narrative template, kind of what the ABSL should look like by the time you get done. Here's some helpful hints. And then I've got it for the APTL and some on down through you. As you go through the program, there's some help with you on some of the other evidences too. Also, as you get to developing your competency folio, here's an example of an exemplar competency folio that you'll be creating. We'll talk about that probably in a week or two, in a class session or two. But you don't have anything, you don't even have anything now to put in that folio. So let's get some artifacts collected before we worry about where to put. So that is in, here we go, what did I click on? My schedule is here. If you ever want to say, when are we meeting? What time are we meeting? And what are we going to be discussing? You can find it here under Clinical Coach Zoom session. Here's the video library where I'm going to post all of the videos that I do for Fall 2020. I also leave up past videos. These are all the videos that I did in 2019 for people who are now, I think, in 604. And I've left those past videos there. I mean, if you want to go back and look at them, you're welcome to do that. I don't know any of you that's going to be that, that desperate to go back and look at old videos, but I'll leave them up there just kind of as an archive of what I've done in the past. Once I said the video from tonight, you'll go to the Clinical Coach Internship shell. You'll click on Video Library. You'll click on Fall 2020, and you'll click on 601, and that's where tonight's link to tonight's recording will be. You also notice a recording here that says setting up your competency folio. Don't worry about that right now. It's a little 2-minute video that you'll need later on. And I want to check the chat here. Oh, okay. Apparently, and I'm glad you brought that to my attention. Apparently there's some conflicts. Like I said, Dr. Church and I went through a little bit of different versions depending on who we thought was going to be in the cohort and what time the cohort was starting. So there may be some conflicting dates. I think I updated mine. Let me look here and see. I'm going to move that out of the way. Clinical Coach Fall. Our next class session should be the 24th. Let's see. Okay. Whoop, sorry. Okay. All right, our first session is tonight, September the 10th at 7 p.m. Our next session is the 24th. Then we're going to go December the 15th. Let me pull over my calendar. I may have gone off share here real quick, or I may still be sharing. It should be October the 15th. Come on. Where's calendar at? Oh, there it is. Okay, so October the 15th should be the next one. Yep, it's right there. I am pretty sure that this is the correct version. At least it is for the next 2 class sessions. And I'll look at the chat here in a minute. Look like something. So yeah, the version that is on my Clinical Coach Internship shell is the correct schedule. We're meeting tonight. We'll meet again on the 24th. We'll meet again on October the 15th. I'm sure the rest of these are accurate as well. And it's all the grade in areas. And I'll confirm that. And if it's not, I'll change it. But I know the next 2 sessions are what we've got right here. Excuse me. All right, so go by this. Go by what's on my clinical internship shell, and that way we'll stay in sync. And like I said, you'll notice each week, week 4, individual and small group Zoom group sessions available upon request. I'm always open to do those, schedule them if that's what you need. Great. So you are seeing my calendar right now, right? Give me a nod if you're seeing the schedule. Somebody should have stopped me. Okay, all right, hold on. Let me do a new share. Blah, 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 blah. Zoom used to be able, you do screen share and it used to pull up whatever you were looking at. Now you see my schedule? Okay, this is the one that I just pulled off of out from my clinical internship shell. It's showing September the 10th, and I just confirmed it with my my personal calendar. It's showing September the 10th. The next is September the 24th. The next is October the 15th. Those are correct with my calendar. I'll double check to make sure the rest of these are, but I feel like they are. Okay, let me check the chat here. So the calendar or the schedule that you pull off of my clinical internship shell for our meetings is correct. Okay, groovy. Thank you. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to go back to the clinical internship shell. If I find it, okay. All right, if I'm ever referring to something on the screen and I'm thinking I'm sharing it and you're not seeing it, somebody please feel free to interrupt me. Do the something, or unmute yourself and give out a shout, because I'm only looking at a limited number of screens right now. Right now, you should be looking back at my clinical internship shell. We just got finished looking at my clinical coach meeting Zoom session and the video library. Here are the handbooks that I referred to the last time we met. These are all updated: the clinical internship handbook, site supervisor handbook, the scale handbook that we were looking at earlier. You'll find that on here if you need it. Now we get down to the meat of my clinical internship shell. When you turn something into me, Dr. Church or Dr. Tobbs, at some point in time after let's just talk about task 1. You finished task 1. You presented it in your peer review group. You got feedback from your peer review group. You made those revisions. Either before, during, or after that, you turn it over to your course instructor, and you get feedback from your course instructor on any necessary revisions. At some point in time, your course instructor is going to say, okay, this is good and ready to go to Dr. Bullis. You take that document, that updated document, and at that point in time, you send it to me in my clinical internship shell. Just saw a chat pop up. Okay, yeah, Ashley, go ahead.
We did not get very clear instructions on where to submit our first draft and really how that process of the peer review works.
Okay, you will need to get back in touch. The peer review process is done by the course instructor. Once it gets to me, there's no peer review process. That's kind of the beginning of the peer review process. And I guess right now the focus of that instructor is just on you kind of getting writing and getting acclimated. That will come about that. If you're unclear about that, email your course instructor and they'll give you some more information on that, because I don't supervise the peer group review. So sorry, I couldn't help you any more than that.
Thanks, Kitty. Thank you. And then Kitty, yes, I agree with you. I feel like it should be submitted on Sunday per our our agenda, but I don't really know how to submit that to our course instructor, and I don't really know how to start that peer review process. We don't have classes.
Reach out to your course instructor, ask them for a phone conversation if you need to clarify that. And like I said, that's one of the reasons I don't set deadlines for what you need to turn into me, because everybody does it a little bit different. Everybody has a different process. And so I'm not going to throw a deadline on you and it not be logical based on what you're having to do in the course shell. So I'm good to wait. I'm good to wait. So at some point in time, your course instructor will say your task 1 is ready for Dr. Bullis to review. So you take that document and you get into the clinical internship Blackboard shell and you bring it to me. Now, if you'll notice, there's two different sections here. Now, this line right here is very important. When I'm giving you feedback just to revise your document, not to take a grade on it, but that initial reading, this is where I want you to put it in review. So you take task 1, Dr. Todd, Dr. Church says this is ready for Dr. Bullis. You get into the clinical internship shell, you pull it up, you've got your Absol task 1 ready in whatever folder on your computer that you have it ready in. You come over here, you click Absol task for review. And if you'll notice, they're all listed here. Task 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You've got task 1, and sometimes people get off track and click the wrong one. If you do, I'll let you know, and we'll make it right. It's not a big deal. But you click on task 1, and it's going to look a little bit different. This is people that have turned it in the past, but yours going to see a window that populates that will allow you to write me a note and will allow you to upload your task 1. I go into the review. I'll check the chat here in just a moment. I'll go into the review. I'll pull up that document. I'll read it. I need it in Microsoft Word, because what I do is I pull it up in Microsoft Word, and then I give comments in the comment section at specific points within your narrative. I'll click on that and I'll put in that comment bubble and write in the comment bubble so you'll know specifically in your document what I'm talking about. And then I'll upload my version that has the feedback back into this discussion board for you to look at. Now, it may take 1 time, it may take 2 or 3 times. Mainly it's just, 1 or 2 times. I'll read it, give you feedback, you'll send it back to me. I'll look at it again. I may look at it and say, hey, this is great. You're good to go. I can't give you any suggestions for improvement. Whenever we get to the point where it's in great shape, and at that point, I feel like it is a grade of 100 and ready to be archived until we need it later, I will tell you ready for Dropbox. You take that final version that we both looked at and reviewed and you did revisions on, and I gave you the green light, you take that, and now you bring it down here to the evaluation Dropbox. You have your Absol task 1. You click on here and you send it to me for evaluation. This is where I collect the grade. I'm not going to advise you to send it to me within the Dropbox until that's why you're never going to make less than 100 for me, because I'm not going to let you submit it for grading until it's got 100 on it, because I want that ready to go, polished, and then we archive it for when we need it later. And then you get the grade on it, and then we move on. So once again, you take that task. I'm going to go back up here to the home page. The instructor says, okay, Joe, task 1 looks good. I think you should send it to Dr. Bullis and get his feedback. You take task 1, you come into the clinical internship shell, you click on Absol task for review. Now's not the time to put it. It's not to be evaluated. We're just reviewing it now. Don't put it in down here, or you probably will get a grade of 0, and I'll tell you to submit it to review, and then you can submit it down here later, and we'll revise that grade of 0 to 100. But you take it and you put it in the review. We'll do some exchange within that discussion board under the review section, getting in your task 1 in good shape. I'll say, okay, ready for Dropbox. At that point in time, you click on Dropbox, you upload it there, and you get your grade. That's the process that I engage in once you have that task ready to go from your course shell. Okay, let me look at the chat. And I'm gonna kind of unhitch the wagon right there. We'll pick it back up next session. That's really going to get you everything you need to know right now. And so for the rest of the session, I'm good to answer questions, even about this. If you want me to answer questions about this, that's cool too. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read it out. Even though we have some flexibility with deadlines, our task 1 is due on the syllabus next Wednesday, and task 2 to our peer group the same day. However, we have not been given direction. My class with Dr. Church is not till next Wednesday. Email him or call him. I'm pretty sure he gave you his, I think I was there when I heard him give out his phone number. Certainly he responds to emails quickly. Send him an email, let him know about your, about that deadline, about your anxiety with that deadline at this point in time, and he'll make it right. He'll make it right and take care of you. There's no doubt in my mind. So if you have any issues with that, let Dr. Church know. Let him know. Right. Okay. Oh, you're very welcome. You are very welcome. And if you can't ever get hold of Dr. Church, he's an associate superintendent. He's maxed out a lot. If you can't ever get hold of Dr. Church, send me an email, let me know. If you've contacted him and he hasn't got back to you within 24 hours, reach out to me and let me know, and I'll help you track him down, or I may know something that's going on with his schedule, and he may have given me some information to give to you. So if you can't find Dr. Church, let me know. If you can't ever find me and you can't ever find Dr. Church, then email Dr. Lamb. Dr. Lamb he's retired from the school system, former superintendent, retired from the school system. He does Gardner Webb 24/7. I've emailed him at 3 o'clock in the morning before, and by 3:05 he's returned my email. I don't know how he does it. I think he sets his alarm by or something. But if you can't ever get hold of Dr. Church, get hold of me. Can't ever get hold of me, get hold of Dr. Lamb, and he'll be right there. Yeah, William's right. He's great. He's great. Dr. Lamb's good. That's why he runs the show in this program. I've got a lot of respect for Dr. Lamb. I wish I could have worked for him when he was a superintendent. All right, any other questions? Like I said, we're going on an hour now. You've got everything you need to know for me to progress forward. And still continue to ask questions. Even if you think that I don't know the answer because it's dealing with your course shell, ask them anyway. I might be able to help you. I've always been of the mindset, I'd rather ask a question and get it out than have to sit there and wonder about it. So feel free to ask me anything. If I can't help you or can't answer it, I'll let you know, but I'll either tell you where you can find the answer, or I'll find the answer. We'll find it together. Oh, okay, great, William. Thanks for the clarification. Dr. Lamb is great like that, but Dr. Church is too. I appreciate that comment. Yes, sir. Dr. Church is good about answering that. Like I said, if you can't get between the two of us, and then Dr. Lamb being the third of us, between the three of us, you'll get help when you need it. That's a guarantee. All right. Any other questions for this evening? When we get back together, we'll just see where we're at. I think on the schedule I've got talking about task 3 and 4. We'll see where we're at and kind of what progress has been made since then. We will go back over this Blackboard shell again, just to make sure that the process is good. Just to make sure that you submit. Review is always before evaluation. Review is always before evaluation. This is where you submit first, and I will let you know where to submit for evaluation. We'll go over that again, and anything else that pops up. Any questions, real quick, any questions about your internship hours? Okay, great. If you think of a question later on, email me. If you need to talk, then email me and say we need to talk, and depending on where I'm at and what phone I'm closest to, I'll give you the number to call me there. All right? It is 7:59. I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. I hope and pray that you and your family stay safe and healthy. Contact me if I can help you with anything. Reach out to Dr. Church, reach out to Dr. Todd. If you need some help, we'll be there for you. Until next time, Like I said, I hope and pray you all stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you then. I will post the video in the video library within the next 12 hours. I will also send the link out via email. You guys take care. Thanks for joining me this evening. It's good meeting with you.
Thank you, Dr. Bolus.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.